These slides are as presented at the HPA Tech Retreat, although I've eliminated the ones that related to the introduction to the retreat and only kept the technology year in review, and the audio is being recorded later. So, depending on how you count, this is either the 28th or the 79th annual This is the Year of HDTV. And we've certainly got plenty of HDTV. The Consumer Electronics Association reported as of February of 2013 that 74% of U.S. households had an HDTV. And at last year's Tech Retreat, I reported that Nielsen and Leichtman had reached a 75% number. So this comports very well. We have agreement between three agencies that roughly 3/4 of U.S. households had HDTVs as of February of last year. But we still don't have HDTV press bridges for pool feeds. We're still delivering analog NTSC, even though we've been dealing with digital component video since 1981. We're still delivering mono sound, even though TV has been capable of transmitting stereo sound since 1984. And we're still delivering 4:3 pictures, even though 16:9 was adopted starting in 1985. And people who are doing HDTV are still shooting and protecting for 4:3. It's pretty amazing. And this was another good year for plain old ordinary TV. On the left you see the album that Gil Scott-Heron came up with, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Well, on the right, the television viewer seems not to be willing to be revolutionized. We had another record audience for the Super Bowl, depending on how the numbers are counted, with an average of 111.5 million U.S. TV viewers, more at the beginning of the game, less when it seemed to be obvious who was going to win, and 115.3 million average for the halftime show. So the halftime show actually had 4 million more viewers than the football game. According to Fox, it was the largest ever audience for a live stream for a sporting event, which was 528,000 viewers. Now, that's a lot smaller than 111.5 million. In fact, it's less than 0.5% of the TV viewership. Still, that was up 4% over 2013, and the average duration of the watching was 48 minutes, which is up 25%. By the way, the stadium was blacked out. You could not stream the game in the stadium, and the reason it was blacked out was because it might have crashed the stream, because there were an awful lot of potential viewers in the stadium, and they might have viewed for longer than 48 minutes. Verizon Wireless has been touting that they served 1.9 terabytes in the stadium that night, and AT&T said that they served around 600 some odd gigabytes and 119 gigabytes in the 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. hour. That was their peak. It's interesting that that's before the game started. Now, let's say people were in the stadium about 6 hours. That would be 21,600 seconds, and 1.9 terabytes divided by that comes to about 700 megabits per second. And 700 megabits per second divided by about 80,000 fans comes to about 8 kilobits per fan, but that's just Verizon. If we throw in the other carriers, AT&T, T-Mobile, and so on, maybe 12 kilobits per second. That's not a lot. Now, the figures here are taken from Nielsen's cross-platform series for the third quarter of 2013, and if you go to the link at the top of the page, they will be happy to send you your own copy for free. You just have to fill out a quick little survey. Down at the bottom is weekly viewing, and they didn't put in this weekly viewing chart anything about time-shifted viewing, so I'm also including the numbers for their monthly viewing, which was in a separate section of the report. So looking at monthly viewing, traditional monthly viewing, 152 hours and 8 minutes. And time-shifted monthly viewing, another 12 hours and 31 minutes, for a grand total of TV watching of 164 hours and 39 minutes. Now, there's only 168 hours in a week, so this is almost a person putting in a full-time week, 24/7, watching TV. Now look at internet video, and that's 6 hours and 20 minutes. That's an awful lot less than the TV viewing. You heard from Michelle Proulx a little while ago that there's bound to be some sort of crossover between television and internet viewing, and it certainly could happen, but there's no indication of that happening soon, according to these figures. Here we have a headline from Rapid TV News, also from the Consumer Electronics Show in 2014, saying that second screen users shun live TV sync. Now, last year at the Tech Retreat, we had Sarah Pearson from Actual Customer Behavior, and she showed us plenty of cases where people are using their laptops or their tablets or their phones or maybe all three while they're watching TV. So there's certainly distractions happening, but we are not really seeing cases where people are using their laptops or tablets or phones while watching TV in order to get more information about the TV show that they're watching. Here's another recent headline. This is just from last week, and it's from Pete Putman, who you'll be hearing from later today. And he's talking about antenna digital TV when all else fails. He's talking about the severe weather in Pennsylvania. It knocked out his cable, it knocked out his power, knocked out his phone service, and basically all he had was antenna delivered television. And he fired up his generator, so he had electricity, and he got to watch TV. Now, how many people are doing that? Well, we go back to that Nielsen report, and they're saying that there's about 11.2 million households in the United States that are getting TV only by antenna. And that's up slightly from 2012, which you would expect only if people are doing what's called cord cutting. And sure enough, if you look at the cable figures, they are down considerably. The satellite figures are up a little. The telephone company figures are up a little, but broadcast is also up a little. So there does seem to be a certain amount of cord cutting happening. There's a different research firm, GfK, and they came up with a number that's exactly twice Nielsen's. They say 22.4 million households in the U.S. are getting TV via antenna. Which represents 19.3%, which they say is up from 17.8% in 2012 and 14% in 2010. But if you look up their blog, which I've provided the URL for down at the bottom of the page, they say that, well, maybe 19.3%, maybe it's really only 15%, maybe it's only 13%, don't really go by the numbers. But in either case, both of the research companies are talking about how watching TV via antenna is up and watching it via cable is down. Now, how about the latest consumer sound technology? Well, here's something that Samsung introduced last year. It's the HW-F850 55-inch soundbar, and it has valve amplifier technology. Well, for those of you not familiar with the term, valve is to English as tube is to American. And note the glow. Yes, we are talking vacuum tubes. Yes, this is a brand new Samsung product. Here's the annual CEA survey of household penetration. I've posted this already on the website. There are no big surprises, and take it with a grain of salt, but do note the trends. TV essentially in all households, more even than radio, more even than have cell phones, more than have personal computers, more than have digital still cameras, and considerably more than, according to CEA, have access to the web. 78% according to CEA. Now, you saw figures in that range from previous speakers, so it does seem to be accurate that a considerable number of people can't stream television shows even if they want to. Here's something that got introduced at CES. This appeared in Stereophile's coverage of the show. It's a fairly large speaker, just the thing for a very large living room. And if you were going to have a complete setup for surround sound, this would come to $600,000 per system. And you thought a 145-inch 8K S3D video monitor was expensive. Aereo, you heard considerable amount about last year. The case is going to be heard by the Supreme Court on April 22nd, but the Supreme Court is probably going to decide matters of law and not matters of fact. So whatever you may think about whether their antenna is actually a master antenna or an agglomeration of little tiny antennas for individual subscribers, that's probably not going to be decided at the case. But here's a headline from Forbes where they say that Aereo announced that it was sold out in the New York City area and that amounted to only 300,000 subscribers. But some people since that time have been saying that maybe Aereo wants to create an impression of scarcity to actually drum up more business. And here's a bit more technology news besides lawsuits. We'll start with some nowish stuff related to conversion from video-specific connections and hardware to IP and IT-based production. You'll be hearing more about that at a panel tomorrow morning. Here's a switcher that was introduced at the International Broadcasting Convention, the SVS switcher. And that's the head that was in Amsterdam where the convention was. The electronics were actually located in Germany. And they were simply using a standard IP connection between the two. And the electronics could also allocate their resources appropriate to whoever needed the most of them. So you could have multiple switchers or multiple switcher heads using the same electronics. There's something like this on the allocation of resources in the demo room. I urge you to take a look at the demo from Daystrom, for example. There's the Ikegami HDK 97 ARI, and as the name implies, it has an ARI front end and an Ikegami rear end so that you can apply digital cinematography principles to standard multi-camera production. LED displays got down to a 1.5 millimeter pitch at this point between LEDs. That's from Silicon Core. At the right, I'm showing a 1.9 millimeter pitch wall that was shown at NAB in a kind of news set, and even that was sufficiently tight pitch that in the news set you could zoom in on a newscaster and not see the individual LEDs behind. My favorite camera introduced since the last retreat is EagleCam from the Fraunhofer Institute. They essentially took the camera out of a cell phone and spread it out and put it onto an eagle and then let the eagle fly around with its flock and got spectacular images of what eagles do when they're in the air. And then, of course, 4K, and we'll be hearing more about that tomorrow morning in a different panel. Some future-ish stuff. Well, at the Technology Summit on Cinema that SMPTE did at the NAB show, we saw this coded aperture that MIT has introduced. Basically, you just replace the aperture in the aperture plane of a lens with this thing that has a pattern of holes, and because you know where the holes are, you can figure out what the light was doing at the moment that it passed through the aperture, and you can do refocusing in post. And various other things in post. We've seen this before with multiple cameras, camera arrays, or something like the Litro camera, but this is the first time that we've seen it being done just by changing the aperture in the aperture plane. And in that same session at NAB, Eric Fossum, who's essentially the inventor of the CMOS image sensor, described a new sensor. He calls it the Quanta image sensor, that instead of having pixels has something he calls jots. And there's processing that goes on horizontally, vertically, and in time within the camera itself.